Good morning. I'm John Quaderer with Telos Corporation. We heard from Dr. Lee and talking about the virtual organizations, the containers out there. One of the key takeaways is that it's a come-as-you-are kind of event. So therefore, you want something that is not tied directly to a country. We look at how do we authenticate who you are. And okay, we have the FICAM program going on here in the U.S. CAT cards, level 4, got it. Not going to have that luxury in some of these other events. So we have to have some way to collaborate in that respect, and we have to know who we're dealing with. Roger talked about a lot of the collaborative efforts that we've had so far, and what we did and what we'll talk about are some of the pieces that we put in place to make that happen. We talked about the RSS feed, the web service, to be able to collaborate with whoever wants to log into our application. We talked about taking advantage of existing infrastructure. So you show up someplace, you have email, you have a lot of these services, but then we have some very mission-specific things that we have to do to support this mission. That's where the NCOIC came in. That's where Roger again talked about the data sets that we would be able to pull in to collaborate to make sense out of the world. So as Roger mentioned, we're a widget, and we were able to widgetize our T6, which is our collaboration message handling system, put it onto the Ozone framework. And so we can just bring up our application and do the voice over IP, do the collaboration. That's one of the widgets that Roger talked about. Set up a mission. And actually, we're going to talk about later on in the program how we did some fine-grained access control for that and demonstrate that for you. All right, so what did we have to do? First off, we had to look at data sets. And we have the NCOIC provided data that's represented in blue. And on the other sides, we have commercial maps, we have weather, we have a whole slew of data sets that are available to us. We went ahead and decided to take advantage of all this information and incorporate that into the 7 mission planner. So over here on the right-hand side, you're seeing the 7 mission planner. Now, this is a live data feed. We're actually reaching back into the cloud, grabbing these data sets, pulling them in, and every screen you see here is being refreshed in real time. So hopefully we have good connectivity. Okay, so first off, looking at commercial maps, we have OpenStreetMaps, and there's one that's available right there, so that's commercially available. We went ahead and brought in the information that was available to us in that particular area of operation. Okay, and that's all, and there's a slew of information out there that various mission planners are going to want to take advantage of. We won't go into all of them. We'll just go to one more, which is going to be actually the shape map. This is kind of interesting. This was handed to us by NCOIC and said, okay, integrate this data set. What are these red blotches? The metadata, and guess what? It's satellite imagery coming from a commercial provider. And so what we said this will represent here in this particular exercise will be hotspots, something that we think there may be damage. We may have to go and send some resources over to take care of that particular problem. So we identified it that way. And also from the lessons learned, we have to take advantage of whatever the infrastructure will offer us when we arrive on site. So once again, take advantage of all the commercial things. And what we can do is for the mission planners, Ramil's probably been setting the transparency here so that we can go and show how you can bring in other maps, multiple layers to give you the vision that you need to support your mission. So that's what our 7 mission planner is doing. We initially just brought in that data. The next thing we had to do is, okay, we have to expose some of this data. Now, actually, in the earlier slide with Kevin, he clicked on the 7. Well, and what he showed you was the T6, which is absolutely correct. We stood up the T6 in the cloud. That's one of the applications that he talked about. We just stood it up, pushed a button, here we go. Of course, we had to pre-plan it, but once it was ready to go, you can do exactly as he demonstrated. We have the 7 mission planner sitting back here out of theater, okay? That would reach into the cloud because you're doing your mission planning. It's basically an electronic sandbox, kind of like the movie Minority Report, where you can move things around. So you can move your objects around, plan your mission, capture the mission, have a pre-planned mission, various phases of that mission as you execute. So that's what we'll see in a bit here. And what we did was we said we represent the medical community. So we're that one subset. We don't have the big picture. We're just worried about EMTs, getting people resources in the medical community to where they need to go. So here are the players. We have search and rescue, uncovering information. The 7 mission planner, we talked about that. Emergency response team, they're going to actually respond and to the emergency medical command center, that's really us. And then we have communities of interest, COIs. Now, what we can do is, we'll talk about this particular scenario, then talk about some other capabilities. So here we are, building collapses. Somebody's there with their handheld device. Now here's an example of where we wanted to take existing infrastructure and utilize this. And this was an experience. We found that not all devices are created equal. We're getting an email in. Some of the pictures geotagged a certain way with information. An Android app or other different apps, they geotag it differently. So what we have to do at the T6 level is take that information, parse it out in machine-readable format, generate a schema, and tell the world, here's our schema. Go get at us with REST. Okay? RESTful interface, we're going to expose those services. And a lot of folks actually did that. It really worked out. It was refreshing. So we took that, exposed that information. A report came in. Things are auto-populated. We can go and add attachments, as I mentioned. We add some information to it, describing the nature of it, kind of short and sweet. As mentioned earlier, you don't want to have to log into this stuff. That's why what Craig was talking about earlier with the virtual organizations, with authentication and single sign-on, Roger alluded to that as well. Extremely important. So that's got to be the next step forward, because as was mentioned earlier, if I have to log in, I'm going to throw this thing away. I have a mission to support. So that's a critical piece of this infrastructure. Add an attachment, take a picture, and the picture will get fired forward. So what I did here, for the purpose of this demonstration, is because we're doing real data in real places, I went ahead and took my iPhone, walked outside, and took a picture. And there you're seeing it. That's the casualty rep that I sent in, and here we are. So congratulations, you all casualties. But anyway, what we did was, and I took the real geodata just right off my JPEG photo, automatically parsed it out, sent it down to the 7, where it went geolocated, put it on the map to show where that event was taking place. And the other thing that happened is, I had to turn this thing off last night. We exposed, as mentioned earlier, with RSS web services. So my iPhone was buzzing all night long because these guys are testing, and I'm getting CAS reps showing up in my RSS feed on my phone. So it does work. And also, we exposed the same RSS feeds to all the other participants here. So it was kind of a cool example. And then, of course, the other things that we've seen before, the other emergency response kinds of environments could also consume this and bring that into their overall tactical picture. All right, so we described the scenario. Now, what's happening here at the T6 level is it's a combination of two things. It's the visualization, it's the collaborative piece that we talked about earlier. It's also doing heavy-duty information profiling. What do I mean by that? Some information is structured, a lot of it isn't. So in our particular case, we typically deal with organizational messages where there's some structure, classification, let's say, or precedent. But then most of the information is deep down in the message or in the attachment. So the T6/AMHS is actually profiling on that. And we can profile any information feed. We chose emails here, but tweets, anything that textual that we can get at, we can profile and say that's of interest to that community of interest, whether it's medical or fire or whoever it happens to be. So and we'll show you some of that a little later on of that screen looks like. So the information is profiled to all the communities that care. It's also being profiled back up to the command center so that they have the picture of what's going on within the theater. And the emergency team is released, and they're put on mission to go and assess the situation. At that, what we want to do is let's bring up what a mission plan would look like. So here we are. And how did they get to that point where they had to be dispatched? Well, first off, we have boots on the ground, and we look at what is physically in theater. So on the 7 mission planner, we're able to pre-position some resources and assets. Hospital ship is probably over by the docks and the shore. We have some ambulatory services, could be the helicopter. Could be a number of different things. As Roger mentioned, we sent out an RSS feed saying there's a bridge collapse. That's represented in red there, so we know we can't use that access point. And then we have other resources up by the airport, which are going to be the search and rescue and medevac and things of that nature to prosecute our mission. So what we did here was, rather than drag things around with our finger, you can actually you can generate a mission, capture it, and then send it out as a mission plan, as a KML file, or in this case, what we did was just took a JPEG and put the text right next to it. So in this case, we go and say, okay, let's send search and rescue in here to take a look at what this CASREP is all about. So they will go and dispatch the search and rescue team, avoiding the bridge area. They will come in, they'll look at that, and then they'll generate an update to the casualty report. Of course, we have to track every message that comes in, so we have duplicates so that we're responding, that we know exactly what incident we are responding to. They look at the casualty and say, well, yeah, we need some medical medevac here. So at that point, they're going to say, please dispatch an ambulance. In this case, and once again, they'll execute that mission, again, avoiding the known hazards. They arrive at the site, they do their triage, they figure out who has to be evacuated, who can be treated on site, so forth and so on. At that point, they say, let's transport the patients over to our evac center. So here the mission plan, once again, they lay out the roads that are there and execute. And then as this is happening, we're getting updates into our system, casualty reports, which initiates the process, situation awareness reports, and other just general administrative reports. Somebody might see something is down, broken, and that needs to be brought to the command authority's attention. So the whole idea was to try to collaborate and get this information to as many hands of the actionable people there who need to do things with this. Over here on the right is the other piece of T6, and this is the messaging part. Now, what we did here is use my CASREP. And by the way, what we did is obviously we have white lists and black lists, so it accepted something from my email. The way we do things in our world is if something comes in, it's probably important, but if it's not identified as somebody who I know should be in the mission, it goes into an error queue. Operator looks at it, says, oops, that's significant, let's pass it on down, or that may be something, just noise. So we have to be able to provide the right information to the right people. That's part of what we're doing with T6. So in that particular, there's my photo and so forth and so on. If you look at the other things, we set up communities of interest for the ambulance COI. So we'll run off keywords that would be of interest to them, injury, those kinds of things, put that into that COI. And then, of course, we have the other participants, so Raytheon with their RATS team. We were able to go and put information to their inboxes. Some of these things we can deliver them either by email, RSS feed, or they can simply web in and look at their messages. There we go. So there was one that was sent to us by Raytheon. And that's basically what we've done here in terms of collaboration, using tools that we had already in place, building a couple other interfaces that would web enable some of these functions so that our other collaborative partners could get at us and review this information. So what we did here is we're showing you on the left-hand side the connections that we put together, demonstrating for you live here, just to show you that we could play with the various other players in the field. And actually, I apologize. Winthrop did actually provide some information and update this, but we're getting feeds from them as well, and they're consuming our RSS feed, so my apologies. Okay, then the next thing I want to talk about is the access control piece. As we mentioned before, we have to be able to know the identity of people, know what they're doing, why they're there, and and also provide some really fine attribute-based controls to control that whole process. We heard from Dr. Lee about what they're doing right now with the virtual organizations and those containers to do that type of functionality. What we did for this demonstration was we put a policy enforcement point onto an application that we own, the T6. It was kind of not very flashy, simply because all that we did was relegate control that was embedded in the application silo. We have a SQL Server database in there. We figure out authorization, who can do what their roles are. We said we're going to take a policy enforcement point take that away from that application and federate that, okay? We have to federate that functionality. Why? Because we're collaborating, okay? And we can't have all these silos, different usernames, passwords. Cannot do that. So we put a policy enforcement point on the application. What we're using is XACML, XML Access Control Markup Language. This is an OASIS standard. And once again, we wanted to go with open standards. And why did we choose that? Well, XML, everybody pretty much knows. It provides the fine-grained access control attribute. So for example, now if somebody logs in and they're in a certain geospatial location or a certain point in time, I can look at those attributes, look at the user attributes because they've authenticated in through the virtual organization. Say, I know who the person is, and I know his attributes or her attributes. I know what they're trying to do, and I can either provide access to or deny access to this particular application information, whatever it happens to be. So what we did for this demonstration was, well, don't have a lot of time. Let's try to limit to just setting up a meeting on the T6. And once again, there's not much show because we try to set up a meeting. Either you can or cannot. So in that particular case, we go and put our policy enforcement point in. The policy itself is an important thing because you want to relegate the actual policies for the data owner. We heard that before, and you can do that. Basically, you say you have permissions to control this data or this application. That gets pushed off via XACML policy. They generate that. We use the Telos Secure Directory and Authorization Server. It's a native XML-based directory service that understands schemas, that understands those kinds of things. And so we chose that architecture. And what we do there is we can also simply add all the attributes, pull them in synchronized with other third-party apps through Active Directory, LDAPs, whatever happens to be out there. Pull that information in, and then look at the attributes of the person and making the request. In this case, because it is an EMT user, we validated that attribute. The request is granted, and they can set up their meeting. Fire safety, we specifically set up a policy saying, no, you cannot open up a meeting on the Telos T6, so therefore that's denied. So that was basically what we tried to do in that phase. And once again, the key thing here is having the interoperability with the community. I think it's key that we do the virtual kind of organization things, the authorization, or rather the attribute authentication, who are you? Because there are so many different communities at play here. So trying to get one size to fit all is not going to work. That's a good approach to go after that. Okay, and I think that pretty much covers it.